Reshoring, presented by Tiffany Holkowicz, Chris Sherman, Osiel Escareno, and Sean Mosier. Reshoring can be defined as a firm in the United States or any other country bringing production back to said country because they believe that cost along the supply chain from producing their parts in China or some other developed country are costing more than if they were to just produce said parts in their home country.
When companies made the decision to offshore, they were mainly interested in low labor costs and lower production costs due to cheaper materials in developing countries. Now that those countries are becoming more developed, the price of their services are rising. Along with this, companies have become more aware of the other costs that come with managing a supply chain. By reshoring, companies do not have to pay as much for insurance on their products or spend more time and money on replacing products that have been damaged or stolen. Exchange rates and transportation costs increase the price of your product and can only raise your prices so much before the demand for them goes down. A major opportunity cost that comes along with offshoring is that your company cannot guarantee that its products are being made the way they would like. Due to the increase in total costs for offshoring, a company has to determine if the trade-off is worth it. Due to a decrease in the cost mentioned in the previous slide, a company can increase its profitability if it decides to reshore. This can happen if their demand for products remains the same and they are still producing the same amount of revenue, if not more.
One issue when considering whether or not to nearshore is time, whether it's lead time, time in transit, or the effect of time zones on a business. So the first thing is time zones. Working across time zones can have an impact on a company's supply chain. If a company decides to offshore to China from the United States, it can be up to 11 time zones away. Being this far away can cause multiple issues such as quality control, communication issues, time in transit, and lead time. Nearshoring instead of offshoring can give you more control over the quality of the product that is being made. Shipping from China can take 30 days or more, while shipping from Mexico can take a week or less. This gives less time for your product to be damaged during transit time. Also, if you're on the same time zone, if an issue would arise with the product, it is much simpler to pick up a phone and call someone during the daytime. When a company does choose offshore, overseas employees are sometimes required to work at night or graveyard shift. This can lead to tired employees and a higher turnover rate, both of which can affect the quality of the product that is being made. Another issue with being spread across different time zones is communication. This can make something as simple as scheduling a phone call a difficult task. For example, if you need to call someone who is in China, there's a good chance that it is the middle of the night and no one is working, so it leaves a very small window of time to make the call. Another challenge is face-to-face meetings. Intercontinental flights are also much more expensive than staying on the same continent. So if you have to fly to China instead of Mexico for a conference, it will take a lot more time and cost a lot more money for the company. Some companies even forego face-to-face meetings altogether, even though they are important and help smooth out a company's operations overall. Intellectual property rights is an important factor when considering where to manufacture your product. Over the past 30 years, many South American countries have made significant progress in trying to protect intellectual property of businesses. In Mexico specifically, there's NAFTA, which protects certain intellectual properties. Now let's compare this to a country like China. The Chinese government estimates that counterfeit trade in China is between $19 and $24 billion a year, which accounts for 8% of China's gross national product. Also in China, there are currently no criminal penalties specifically directed at the exporters of counterfeit goods. So, as previously mentioned, shipping from Mexico takes a shorter time than shipping from China. A longer lead time can have multiple effects. It will increase the costs by paying more for shipping, insurance, and clearing customs. It will also increase the complexity of your supply chain and increase the time to market. Time to market can be especially important to certain industries such as technology, where a product can quickly become obsolete. A shorter lead time also allows companies to respond faster to fluctuating customer demand. This will make it easier for companies to produce the goods that customers actually want to buy.
So I will be talking about risk and how it would affect the international transportation. First off, it's risk disadvantages. Um, I have language barriers when moving over from maybe saying like China um, to going to Mexico or Canada when you're nearshoring. This could be different, or this could affect your company by employees speaking different languages. Just saying, if you've been in China for several years and you move over to Mexico, that language they might not understand as much as if you still were with China, and they could interpret that completely different than what you were minting it for to be. And then just like the communications, maybe your company doesn't have as many employees that speak the language of Mexico, saying Mexico, and they might not be the same thing that they're trying to say. So risk disadvantage technology. So China was more developed, I'd say, in technology more than Mexico is. Not saying that their technology isn't advanced, but having systems maybe that are faster or systems that can do things that maybe other people can't. And that's why they moved to China, for them to do that. But because of the labor cost, they move over to Mexico, and the technologies will be different. You're used to that technology, but maybe now you're going to have to implement something else. Let's say that you had SAP, and then Mexico doesn't. The company that you move over doesn't have SAP, or if you try to implement SAP, it might take a while for them to be able to use that. So the risk of moving over with the technology side might take a while for it to happen, for them to get used to the technology. And then the last is the cultural. Um, so for China, it took them a while to get accustomed to the Chinese like New Year for China. Like the company knew that they would have to, like, because China celebrates it, like they would know that maybe, hey, they're going to take that day off. But for Mexico, they have to get used to new holidays, new things that Mexicans or would like celebrate differently. Maybe like the independence of Mexico, or even Canada, if they had different cultures than what we do. That's something that they'd have to get used to, and it's going to take a while. And maybe the company doesn't have a while, that they just had to move over um, to Mexico or Canada because of the high labor cost in China.
In conclusion, near or reshoring offers the possibilities of better communication between all parts of business. Let it be culturally or geographically, your business just gets closer and easier to communicate between. And also, by reshoring, you shorten your supply chain. And with a short supply chain, you're able to eliminate hidden costs, which would hurt you in the long run. And it also allows you to lower the lead time. And by lowering the lead time, you're allowed to be more flexible in business, which is always profitable. And you're also able to increase profits by lowering the total cost, which is a big factor anytime you're looking at supply chain management. If reshoring allows you to lower the total cost, you are able to gain more profits per unit, and which would help your business in the long run.